Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Trinis Abroad. This is episode number 9. If you missed any of our earlier episodes, feel free to check it out. All the episodes are available on YouTube and Spotify. This is episode number 9, and this episode is entitled Canadian Norms, Culture, and Society.
Question number 1. What is the Canadian language?
Well, initially, in moving to Canada, we have a strong Trinidadian accent. We speak very fast and we speak with dialect and maybe a little bit of broken language, which in Trinidad is custom. But when we moved to Canada, I noticed having to repeat myself more often. So that's why I started to speak more slowly and enunciate my words a bit more, get out all these slangs and start speaking more of standard English. Because honestly, in Canada, people don't really understand the Trinidadian slangs and the accent. As you could tell, we've been living here for the last 5 years. My Trinidadian accent is still here, and it's something that is built into me. But I tend to speak more slowly when I'm speaking in and around in public and even in the workplace.
Another thing I found that we had to learn when we moved to Canada is that we can no longer use our Trini slang in a lot of everyday sentences when speaking to persons, whether it's in work or you're out in public. So a lot of our Trini slang, people tend to confuse it with other interpretations. So, as a Trini, we like to say lime and olia, what happened, and you would realize very quickly that you can't say the same words. It has a different meaning to Canadians. So you'd find that we had to start using a lot of more standard English or neutral words so that way persons can understand us a little bit clearer.
And while learning to adapt, yes, we use more neutral language, but I think in Canada, there's a bit of Canadian slang, like someone says, hey, or even like saying sorry. I think Canadians are very polite, and every little thing they're always willing to say sorry, which is kind of custom to us. So sometimes you bump into someone or even pass someone very close to you, you say, hey, sorry. Sometimes you say, hey, how's the weather, eh? Sometimes it's that those little bits of conversation and conversation pieces, Canadian slang, that we kind of incorporated into our daily conversations. But obviously when we're home and when we're speaking with each other, we speak, Trinidadian. But obviously when we go outside, people won't understand us. So that's why we had to adjust our language a little bit more so that people could understand us. But when we are around like Caribbean people, they tend to understand a bit more of our Trinidadian slang. And sometimes they're like, hey, what you said just now, are you from Trinidad?
Some of my fondest memories when initially I started working. So let's say that you finish work at the end of the week and you see your coworkers back on a Monday. The first thing you might want to say to your coworker, hey, what did you do over the weekend? And typical Trinis, you would say, well, I went on Lime here, I went and meet this one. But you can't really say that here. So I remember having to slowly change what I would say. So instead of saying, I went to Lime with my friends, I had to say, I went to hang out at this place, or I went to visit this coffee shop or this place. And I thought it was funny for me and awkward initially because never in a million years would I ever say something like that if I was back in Trinidad. But if I didn't say that, then Canadians won't understand.
Okay, so now on to question number 2. Have you noticed how polite everyone is?
I think everyone knows that Canadians are extremely polite. They're very friendly, but they're also known for being extremely apologetic. They like to say sorry for things that are not even their fault. And I found that in the beginning, everywhere we would go, not only are people saying thank you, which is very polite, but I found everyone would say sorry for things that they shouldn't even be sorry for. Canadians are very friendly. They're very courteous. What I like is that everywhere you go, like someone will always open the door for you. And I like that kind of kindness. I think it's also helped us be the same way because I remember being back in Trinidad, people don't usually do that. And that's one thing I like about Canadians, how polite they are. But you don't always have to say sorry for everything. On the topic of Canadians being polite, I found that the easiest way to start a conversation with a Canadian is not just about, hey, how's your day? But it's also about bringing up the weather. That's something I find that is unique in conversations. It seems to always be the opening line for any type of conversation. Whether I meet with someone in person, I'm having a video chat with someone, that's the first thing I'm hearing to start a discussion. How's the weather by you? Is it snowing today? And it opens up a lot of discussion, and it kind of breaks the ice a little bit, especially if you're meeting people for the first time. And it was something, I never thought would be a conversation, starter, because in Trinidad, we don't ever talk about the weather because it's either hot or it's raining. In Canada, because it's seasonal, there's always varying weather. It varies each day, it varies by province, it varies by city. And that is always something to talk about. If ever you meet someone and you don't know what to say to them, always start with talking about the weather.
And we Trinis have a tendency to be bold, direct, or even confrontational. That is always going to be perceived here in the workplace or even in society. So we tend to tone ourselves back a little bit because we don't want to come across as rude or too direct. Yes, we are very brave and we have a strong personality. As Anthony mentioned, it's everything is kind and polite and soft-spoken and courteous and, nice, which is, welcome in society. But sometimes our, Trini side comes out, and we need to dial it down a little bit, because sometimes in the workplace, what I notice is like strong personalities are a bit scary. Trinidadians or even Caribbean people tend to be more open in the workplace, and we make comments about each other. In Canada, we have to dial that down a lot, because you can't make comments about people's figure, how they look, what they're wearing. It could be taken as sexual harassment or even harassment in the workplace. People feel uncomfortable. Reason being that people are from different cultures and may not have the same reaction as a Trinidadian or a Caribbean person. So that's something I noticed that we have to be very careful about commenting on others in the workplace, because Trinidadians, we like to talk our minds and we like to be bold. The way when that pants looking good, or that shirt looking tight, or when you put on some weight this weekend. No, we can't make those kind of comments here. It is frowned upon. It's something that is taken as disrespect. So commenting on other person's look, how they feel, it's very, very serious here, and it's something that we need to pay mindful to, because in Trinidad it's very open and we are very open of our feelings and how we express ourselves. But here it's way different.
Question number 3. What's it like living in such a multicultural country?
So I'm moving to Canada. Canada is the land or the country of immigrants. I have met people from literally all over the world, and with that, they have their own cultures, speech, norms, likes, dislikes, and you have to be very mindful of this. Yes, it's a learning experience. We learn a lot about religions I've never even heard of. People I've met speak languages I've never even heard of as well. One of my coworkers, she speaks 7 different languages, and I'm struggling to even speak English and French. But that's something that you learn here, that English isn't that common, and sometimes the co-workers actually are now learning English for the first time, and they were very surprised that we actually talk good English. So they were like, oh, in Trinidad, how long have you been learning English, or what language does Trinidadians speak? So in Trinidad, English is our first language. So that was a shock to them, because from their home countries, they speak different languages, and they grew up speaking a lot of different languages. They exposed to a lot of religions and stuff. So that's something is very different here. We tend to live in a bubble, I would say, back in Trinidad, because it's just common, like a few different languages, a few different religions. But here you have to be mindful of people are coming from all over the world, and it's a good opportunity to learn and experience different societies and their norms.
Living in Canada, which is the land of immigrants, is also learning to understand persons' traditions, their way of life, which is completely, in some ways, different to Trinidad. They have different religions, they speak their own languages, but it's also understanding that workplaces here also tailor to accommodate these cultures and multiple or different religions. And like one good example of a lot of workplaces I've seen have dedicated prayer rooms to accommodate certain cultures, where they have to, frequently use the room for prayer during the day, which I thought was a really good accommodation, since it's something we don't have in Trinidad. At times, it's also trying to understand, as Sharon mentioned, there are certain things that we would say as a Trini that would otherwise be taken as offense or disrespect, and understanding that, a lot of our traditions that we have as Trinis, a lot of our holidays, a lot of our religions are not celebrated the same way. And one good example is that of Christmas. So only upon moving to Canada, I slowly realized from interacting with a lot of different persons that there are some religions, some cultures, they don't celebrate Christmas or even some of the other holidays that we would have in Trinidad. And it's trying to understand that because you also need to be mindful and respectful towards them. So sometimes there are some workplaces where you can't overly, I want to say, celebrate certain holidays because you have to be mindful of other persons. And that's something you have to get adjusted to.
So living in a multicultural society, it allows us to present ourselves and promote Trinidad because a lot of people don't even know where Trinidad is, where the Caribbean is. They may have heard about it on the news, or sometimes they mightn't even know. So we take this opportunity to promote the Caribbean, show them on Google Maps, show them where it is, show them the flag, show them what people in Trinidad look like. Often enough, they always have this kind of mindset that Trinidad is underdeveloped and it doesn't have cars or like buildings and stuff. So sometimes my friends, they say, oh, it's in the Caribbean, so it has to have a lot of beaches. What about like buildings and stuff? They all have like air conditioning? I was like, yes, it's developed just like here. And often enough, I show them like stuff on social media and even photos of Port of Spain, the airport, and like, tourist stuff to do. And then often enough, they want to visit the Caribbean. So that's a good way of promoting and educating others, just as they would educate us about their culture. So that's something that we really enjoy, and it's something that is good to learn. And being in a society like this, it helps us, learn about the world and meet people from all over the world. Okay, now moving on to question number 4. How do we keep our Trini identity?
I would say one of the biggest ways we can keep our Trini identity is by trying to maintain the same way we speak. So for both of us, 5 years living here, I would say for the purpose of work, we have to almost adjust our speech, our tone, the words that we use. But when we are with each other or when we're around our family in Canada, when our family comes to visit, we're, speaking with our family back home, the Trini in us just comes out. So I think it's learning how to switch it on, to be around family, friends, other Caribbean persons, but we can also adjust as well.
Also, too, in keeping with our Trini identity, we listen to Trini music like all the time. We're always blasting soca in the car, even in and around the house. We're looking at different things on social media, carnival. We also go to the Trini festivals in and around the Toronto, the GTA area. There's a big Trini festival that happens annually in Toronto, and we went every year so far. It's a good opportunity to meet our Trini friends and experience Trini food. It's something that we can't really get out of us, and we really enjoy, the Trini culture, and we keep it alive. Sometimes we wear like a small t-shirt with like Trinidad and Tobago on it. Also too, we also cook Trini food sometimes if we can't make it. There's a lot of Trini restaurants nearby. I often like doubles, roti, something that I miss as well. It's not the Trini taste, but it's something that is really close.
Question number 5. How has living here changed the way we express ourselves?
So when expressing ourselves and sharing with others our Trini culture, I had the pleasant opportunity. One of my coworkers, he was asking about the Trinidadian food, and I was telling him about it, and he was so interested that I actually took him after work to one of the restaurants to try a doubles and an aloo pie. And he was like, oh my God, this is like one of the best things I ever ate. He actually had 2 of each. And he's like, I need to go back here. And we actually went back one other time. Sometimes it's just like, the conversation piece. And sometimes it opened up the appetite to different cuisines and different cultures. He also shared his cultures of baking. It's something that we really like to share in and around multicultural society. It's always good to meet new people and show them the Trini side and show them the style, the Trini style, the flavors that is of Trinidad and Tobago.
Another way in which Trinidadians who live abroad, especially in Canada, can still keep their identity and express themselves is that of Carnival. So in Trinidad, if you know, Carnival, I would say, is almost the biggest event of the year. But in Toronto, we have our own version of Carnival. What was once called Caribana, it's now called Toronto Caribbean Carnival. And it celebrates not only Trinidadian Carnival, but it celebrates all the other islands in the Caribbean. And that is pretty unique. And that is a way in which a lot of other Caribbean persons, they celebrate their culture through this festival that is held every year.
Well, changes is part of life. There's no big change in how we interact with society. We are brave. We are from the Caribbean. We speak up. We speak our mind and we don't hold back. Sometimes we need to. But sometimes we just speak up. We learn the different laws. There are different laws here. Getting to know our society is very different from Trinidad. We need to spend time, integrate. These things take time. Knowing how to interact with different people, knowing what they like, what is allowed, what is not allowed. Because it's a new feeling. You're not on vacation anymore. You're living here, so you have to be a part of society, integrate yourself well, and get to know others and get to know what the cultural norms are here. So sometimes in Trinidad, as I said, we express ourselves and we may be the first ones to speak when there's a question. But we notice like what we do here is like we kind of hold back a little bit to see how others react, and sometimes we may be the first, it may be itching us to talk first. Sometimes we kind of hold back to observe society and how the people interact with each other, body language, the things that they say, and we try to adapt these things. This is a nice way of a nice guide or a nice tip of how to integrate in society here or even anywhere in part of the world. You observe. You need to observe as much as you can because you're learning yourself. Yes, you want to bring your Trini side or the Caribbean side, but sometimes it's good to take a step back, observe how people interact, how they speak, and how they answer questions. Sometimes you may learn from this because we notice in and around the workplace, in and around society, we learned a lot here because it's a lot of different opinions and maybe different from how we speak or even how we act in Trinidad or even in the Caribbean. And sometimes we incorporate those into our culture and how we interact with society as well. And that's how we learn.
Being a Trinidadian is an invaluable thing to living in Canada. We stand out because we are different, we are bold. What I like to say is that we add that extra spice to any type of society, whether you're in a workplace, you're going out. You can always spot a Trini, you can always spot a Caribbean person because we're different, we stand out. We add that something extra, that extra flair. We as Trinis, we just bring that energy. We bring that extra something. We bring that humor. We bring the creativity. We bring the spark that ignites the flame. And it's about taking all of those elements and just trying to adapt and integrate into Canadian society.
And as Caribbean people, we have it in us. We like to express ourselves. So we notice that we wear a lot of colors when we go outside. We dress up a bit. Sometimes when we go out, we look around and everyone is wearing black. Seems to be like a dark gray or black every day, especially during winter. But we notice ourselves wearing colors like green or red or white, and we notice that everyone around us is different. So that's our different way that we express ourselves. And often enough, if we see someone else wearing colors, they're from the Caribbean. So that's something that I really realize is like we still have it in us to dress up, look nice, present ourselves well. Here, the workplace, what we notice is that it's a lot more casual. You wear a lot of, relaxed clothing. People don't wear suits to work. People aren't dressing up, maybe in the business attire or even like in Toronto or the major cities. But what we notice is like in the suburbs, we dress normal to go to work, a hoodie, jeans, and that's like everyday wear. But we notice like for us, even going out, we like to dress up a little bit. And if you're from the Caribbean, even if you're from Trinidad, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So we still keep that identity with us. Well, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of Trinis Abroad. Feel free to check out our full list on YouTube where we have the full videos which is available. This podcast is also available on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Submit your questions for future episodes. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Trinis Abroad. Bye.